the Center for Sustainability Law is an organization that I founded shortly after I graduated from law school. So I had went to law school in upstate New York at the State University of New York Law School. And I went in thinking I was going to be an environmental lawyer, and then I was going to get out and I was going to help communities and kind of have an impact on local resources and communities like rivers and streams and beautiful things that we need to protect. And I actually grew up in a city that was really devastated by industrialization and very, very, very polluted. So I grew up in Buffalo, New York, where when I was growing up, my mom kept us off of all the watersheds. You know, I grew up on a Great Lake that I never was really able to swim in because of the legacy industrial contaminants that had basically been part of the historical economy of the region I grew up in. So I was always interested in the environment, and I was always interested in kind of having access to these natural resources for myself, and then also just to grow up around what it means for a community when you can't go in your watershed or you can't drink your water. It's sort of a really frightening place to grow up in. And so when I got to law school, I really was focused on learning the environmental laws and sort of seeing what toolbox existed to help with these sort of things. And it's interesting because a lot of the origins of some of the environmental laws that we talk about happened in the watersheds in the areas that I grew up in. Clean Water Act, RCRA, these laws that were supposed to sort of make sure that what happened here was never going to happen again. And unfortunately, what I learned was that a lot of our environmental laws have become sort of diluted and sort of inoperable and not really the tools that everyone thought they were going to be. And so based on that, I kind of shifted my focus and realized that what communities really needed was sort of to be involved at an early stage of this new sort of increasingly, I will use the word bureaucratic, and by that I mean, hearings, permits, attending and writing letters and writing comments and participating in this onerous process of regulating an environmental place or space in your community. And so that's kind of how I got the idea to sort of focus my efforts not on kind of enforcing environmental laws per se, but kind of helping communities get involved and understand, what's going on in their backyard. So I ended up relocating from East Coast to the West Coast, and I'm based in Eugene, Oregon. Southern Oregon and the Willamette Valley and the Rogue River Valley make up some of the world's prime agricultural lands for growing seeds. And there are many specialty seed, organic seed, seed growers throughout the region here. And in late 2011, early 2012, canola farmers that were interested in growing canola in the region petitioned Oregon's Department of Agriculture to allow them to start growing in this region. So historically, there was a agricultural control zone that kept oil seeds out of the valley in favor of more food crops. And so they were petitioning to have that separation lifted. And it ended up becoming a really important issue for farmers and eaters, and just everybody in this region got activated to come out and sort of participate in what was going on. The Oregon Department of Agriculture conducted several hearings on the topic where individuals could come up and testify for a couple of minutes and describe what impact the shift from food crops to oil crops would have on their lives. And for farmers, that impact was pretty significant, especially for specialty seeds farmers, because of the likelihood of gene flow, where the canola is 98% genetically engineered, so the GE-resistant trait, the potential for that to flow into their specialty seed or organic crop was very high. And there was a really big concern that they would lose not only their ability to kind of save seeds, because all of a sudden their personal seeds would be proprietary seeds, but also that they would lose contracts. So some of their biggest buyers are Southeast Asia, Japan, and the reason why Japan buys seeds from these growers isn't because they're the cheapest. It's because they're highly pure. They are grown with a lot of high quality seeds that don't have the presence of any genetically engineered material. So the hearings brought out individuals, farmers, community groups, and in the end, Oregon Department of Agriculture did indeed decide to make a rule change to permit the growing of some canola in the area. And after that happened, it got communities and individuals kind of activated to pursue different channels. Okay, the rulemaking process didn't work. What else can we do? We'll contact our local officials. People started calling and visiting with local officials that they thought could potentially help them keep canola out of the valley. One local representative in Southern Oregon, Representative Peter Buckley, was very active and involved in the process. In Eugene, it was Rep. Holvey, and basically they took the lead in creating legislation that would put a moratorium on the growing of canola in the area for a period of 5 years. And then they, in that 5-year period, they would set up a fund, a pot of money that would go over to Oregon State University, and OSU would conduct studies that would sort of attempt to answer some of the concerns that were raised in all of those public hearings. Things like the gene flow, potential for loss of contracts for specialty seed farmers, those sort of issues would be studied by OSU. So in the end, it kind of was a long process, but the issues that were raised in those public hearings ended up informing, the legislation and the outcome in the end. And I think at the end of the day, everyone felt like it was really great that we were able to keep canola out of the valley, at least for this 5-year period. Another kind of spin-off from this canola issue in Oregon is that it got seed growers and farmers and eaters kind of talking and brought people out, and we started networking and talking to each other. And some folks in Southern Oregon in the Rogue River Valley decided that, they are dealing with a very windy, narrow valley to farm in that really has to deal with isolation, and who can grow what where is very precise, and it's sort of handled by the individual farmers on a very small local scale. And around the same time, a local farmer in that area, Chris Hardy, realized that Syngenta was growing GE sugar beets in very close proximity to organic and specialty seed sugar beet farming operations. And this was in violation of a USDA ordered buffer zone that was supposed to be in place. There was supposed to be 4 miles radius between those operations. And what these farmers were realizing is that, they weren't doing that. They were farming less than sometimes a mile away from the specialty seed and organic beet and sugar beets operations. And so they got the Southern Oregon Seed Growers Association together. They brought Syngenta to the table. They held mediation talks with the OSU Extension that's in Southern Oregon. And during those talks, Syngenta walked away. They basically just said, this isn't going well for us. It's really not part of our business model to, negotiate with local farmers and participate in a local pinning system. Because what happens on a local scale is that these farmers put pins on a map to see who's going to grow what, where, when. So these Southern Oregon farmers said, well, we do this, we would like you to do it. So we're all, we know where things are, when we can time things to sort of reduce the potential for gene flow contamination. And so what happened was Syngenta walked out, and it encouraged that local community to draft an ordinance, and it was a genetically engineered crop ban that would keep the growing or cultivation of any genetically engineered crop in this county would be banned for the future. And so it was a farmer-led ballot initiative in Southern Oregon, and they were successful, and they created a GMO crop ban in Jackson County, and it inspired their sister county, Josephine County, to do the same thing. So they also enacted a GMO crop ban. This year, the election was May 20th, and both counties passed, and it was, I think, somewhere around 66% voters voted yes to have the crop ban. So it was a substantial victory, and it's created a refugia, a place where there's now a place in Southern Oregon where there will be no genetically engineered crops grown.